Welcome to DysFictional, an RPG-focused podcast. I am Ginger, a professional film industry victim and beleaguered partner to two insane nerds.
I'm Randy, the random generator, and I'm one of the insane nerds.
I'm Tukey, former academic gone rogue.
How's everybody's week been?
Oh, just lovely.
It has been a week. Mine hasn't started yet.
I had a fun week. My movie got snubbed for all the Oscars. I'll let our listeners try to decide which movie it is.
How dare they?
I know. So rude after all that work. But it's okay because, you know, I have this as my backup job.
Yeah, we have plenty of D&D to talk about. All works out.
No, everyone needs to figure out what it was and reverse it. You're going to get that Oscar. I'll make sure of it. They'll make sure of it.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Academy for...
Oh, she's doing the speech.
Wow. Yeah, really getting ahead of... Okay.
Pretending like they were supporting the strike at least. And...
Woo, we love you, Ginger.
Yay. Thank you. No. It's fine. Everything's fine. How are you?
Oh, you know, just figuring out ways to actually not kill you guys this week.
That's the weirder thing about it, though. You actively were not killing us recently.
Yeah.
Very confusing.
It is. It does feel weird.
A whole different side of all of us, I think, this week.
It's actually almost like you're trying to make us feel happy for a minute, which I don't trust at all.
Good. That's kind of the whole aspect of it, is to give you that false sense of like comfort before I just come from behind and dagger strike.
I knew it.
I don't think my character's falling for it though.
So, I mean, speaking of like dagger strikes, how does your characters impact other players' characters?
Greatly.
Not that much. What, do you have something to add about this topic, Ginger?
No. I don't. I have nothing to add. No, I do, I guess. My character, I don't know, saved your life a lot. And I feel like that was a pretty big impact for one thing.
I mean, your character did their job, yes. Very well.
Yep.
No, I can work off of this one. So let's bring it back. So yes, your character, there was actually a point, going a little bit of experience here. There was a point, this current campaign kind of early on where, well, I guess even still, my character tends to go down a lot during combat, gets herself in some pretty risky situations. But yeah, Ginger, your character brought her back, including to life, with the Revivify.
Yes.
And then after that point, it definitely impacted my character because, they started to kind of not be sure if they wanted to come back after that point. I think that became a thing for a little while of like, well, should I stay down? Should I not? And there was definitely some big impacts there.
Dissociative longing for death, the sweet, sweet release of death.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, right? Because, I think we've even talked before about like character death, right? And so this was a weird one where, story-wise for the character, it kind of made sense for them to be contemplating even returning. But, another character, your character, was essentially impacting onto them like a reason to stay or bringing them back, and then them being like, well, I don't know, maybe I should keep coming back or whatever it is. So kind of a more dramatic example of character impacts. But I mean, there's obviously lots of small things too. It just, your character providing something for another character that they rely on, right? I mean, there's quite a lot of examples of it, but yeah. What about you guys? Any other examples here?
I think also just in general, like the relationships as they go. I know like in our last campaign, my character was like super kind of a loner and didn't really have any connections and ended up sort of like finding a spot in this group a little bit. And even though she was still kind of like on the edge of the group, it was like the first times she'd been involved with like other people willingly. And a lot of the specific characters in that campaign had a lot to do with that as well. Because there were several times in that campaign where I was like, okay, we did a mission. I should leave. There was nothing really keeping her there. It wasn't like, I guess we were getting paid, but that was kind of it. It was like, I could always have just like been like, okay, I did that job. Bye. But she genuinely ended up staying because she liked you guys. So I did think about having her leave several times, but it just kind of never happened.
Yeah, I think a little more like, not direct with like relationships and stuff like that, but like in more indirect way of people interacting with others and affecting them is a lot of choices, because your character may be like determined to be that person who wants to be the murder hobo, and sometimes it's an intentional thing. Where again, it's something that like I think a lot of people want to kind of play with sometimes, but you go with the group as you're kind of the murder hobo, and the group's supposed to not let you be that murder hobo. We kind of had that with one character for us before, where he was kind of a liability, and we were all supposed to be these characters to basically overcome be his weaknesses, or overcome his weaknesses in a sense. So he's not very smart, so we got a smart person. He does not have direction, so we have someone who's very charismatic or knows how to lead and things like that. But he was the rock that had the group together in a sort of sense. But I mean, he didn't last very long, honestly. But still, I think like having characters that can influence other people's actions, this is where like the flaws and all that can come into play, where you really want to do the thing but the rest of the party doesn't, so you kind of have to either take that back seat and not do the thing, or wait till everyone's asleep and do the thing anyway,
Yeah, definitely. And it's in this campaign specifically, it's been tricky because we've got this leader dynamic, like who's in charge, and it keeps sort of bouncing back and forth a little bit, but also like
and everybody's chaotic but you.
Yeah, like when the one person, me, who actually wants to be a little bit more like plan ahead, is in charge, no one listens to me ever. And it's like you keep
going rogue.
You keep being like, not you, Tuki, but like you, as in the entire group, keeps being like, no, we want you to be in charge, and then they just don't listen.
Yeah, you're the one who like rolls open the map and like puts down, everyone's over you. You're like, all right, and then you gotta have this whole plan out, and then when you look back, everyone's gone and doing their own thing. You're like, what? No, get back here.
Hasn't failed yet.
I mean,
yeah, they sort of also keep using the excuse that we keep not getting permakilled as like evidence that they did the right thing. And it's just not
still here.
It's just not true.
I mean they literally let like the equivalent of like a nuclear bomb go off, and yet hey, we survived, so everything turned out okay.
Yeah, I was not happy about that.
I mean, here's the other thing too with this topic of impacting other players' characters, right? It's, how okay is the other player with it too? I mean, well, there's two pieces to it, right? It's how making sure and knowing that someone else is okay with your character impacting them in certain ways, but then also staying true to your character and, following through on that if that's what you want to do too, right? There could be two aspects of it. I think going back to the example we were talking about before, where you were bringing my character back to life, I think you even asked me outside of the game at one point and be like, do you actually want your character to die, or is it okay that I keep bringing them back?
Yeah.
And I said, it was fine, because if they chose not to come back, they could still choose not to come back, or just disappear or something.
Yeah, because essentially once my character figured out that Silica like basically was like, I didn't really want to come back too much, or like I would be okay if I didn't come back, she sort of made it like her life mission to change that percentage roll over time. And I messaged you and I was like, hey, so my character has decided, like, basically over her dead body, like like screw you. You don't get a say. But I am asking you, like, if you just don't want to play this character anymore or anything, if you'd rather roll a new character, if you're not having fun, like, I will roll it into the story that, like, you know, I miss it, or I'm not there, or, you know, like, we'll figure out how to let go of that character for you. But you're like, no, it's fine. But I didn't want to, like, I didn't want to stick you with a character that just kept coming back even if you didn't want to play her anymore.
Well, the other thing too I was going to say was, you know, there's other examples of it too. Randy, our characters back a little while ago, where they were connected, and it always seems like character death keeps coming up as a major one, but it is a strong example. And one of our three characters died, but then the other two were basically focused on getting that person back, which is, you know, sort of an indirect impact of one character on others. Sort of drove their focus for a little while.
Yeah, and then, you know, you always have the example of, like, the good person in a group of not as good people too, where kind of similar to what I was saying before, of one person's, like, say, like, flaw or something being overridden by the entire party, but then sometimes it's sort of the opposite, where one person's beliefs are overriding what the party as a whole wants to do. And it's a conflict for that character or the party. Like, does the party go along enough with the other person to allow them to, like, okay, fine, we won't kill everybody then this time? Or do they just say screw that and kill everybody and potentially risk losing that character, you know, the other character, like the paladin, for example, or something, because they don't want to be involved in that kind of group because that's not their way. And it's not something that they may have thought about it firsthand or something, but everyone else kind of liked the idea of killing a few people, you know?
Yeah. What's it like when you start liking the idea of killing a bunch of people?
I don't know. Wouldn't know.
How's that feel?
I do have a good example of, well, maybe not killing, that's kind of extreme, but like a negative action from one character to another, which actually ended up being hilarious. This was a different D&D group for me, but another person's character, I don't remember what it was. My character got something, and I think he wanted it. So that night, his character like climbed in through the window and went to take it from my bag, but I woke up while they were doing it. So they just looked at me and said, "You didn't see anything." Put it back and walked out. And I think my character was just like, wait, how am I? No one's going to believe me. Like, what do I even do? And it was hilarious. It was an absolutely hilarious moment. But that is technically a direct impact. You could even think of the same lines of, like, a greedy character in a group, like someone who's trying to kind of like weasel their way into taking some more loot than the others might be getting or something. Again, actions that are true to a character, but
sure,
could be kind of like iffy subjects depending on who you're playing with.
That's also kind of like with, say, one of your two characters where you guys had a sort of backstory, but of course didn't quite remember each other in the beginning, which was kind of funny. And then finding out later on, but having something like that where it's a little bit of, not so much a rivalry, but a rivalry can be a fun way to impact another person's character. But having any sort of history allows you to kind of create each other's story along with it. And I think one of my examples was when I was trying to create a character to go along with someone else who wasn't really interacting with the group as a whole. So I was trying to help that. And then, you know, you kind of make up moments like, oh, hey, you remember that time where we, like, you know, beat that guy up together, and like that's when we first met and something. And it's a story that I just made up, but now you're like kind of like got to go along with it. And you're like, oh yeah, haha, that was fun. And then you kind of like add on to it perhaps and stuff. And then you start creating an entire backstory with everybody, which is a lot of fun.
That's like really utilizing like your in session, like canon creation privilege, right? Because you can say anything you want.
Oh, for sure.
Like I could actually, that gives me some ideas. I probably shouldn't talk about them.
No, but even then, like at the same time, if the person doesn't like that or something, and they could even just go back and go, you were definitely drunk that night. That is not how I remembered it. and, come up with something else. Like there's so many scenarios where like if you're clever and could somehow twist it, like, oh, that was an illusion. Like there's many different ways, especially with magic involved, that like you could easily turn the tables.
I wasn't even there that day.
Yeah, exactly. Like that wasn't me. That must have been like Samantha.
Who were you
like
having sex with?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that escalated.
Were you cheating on me? But yeah, so there's definitely ways around it if the other person doesn't like it. But the idea, obviously with us in particular in our group, is that we try to do it as a way to enhance the stories, not try to like brick your character or something like that. Like we want to help you flesh it out, so that's the idea with it.
Yeah, and another thing, talking about like funny examples, was in our last campaign, Tuki, your character, Nano, who like through a sheer misunderstanding at some point that was like half misunderstanding, half joke, ended up like the entire party ended up being suspicious of him all the time.
I was just thinking about that one. Yeah. And everyone, due to whatever was going on, like a kind of a spell in the area, plus some other misunderstandings, my character for like at least a couple sessions was somehow branded like a traitor. And they were literally just sitting there like, I did nothing wrong.
It's true. I like, yeah, the Nano did nothing wrong hashtag is real. This campaign, not so much.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The last campaign. Yeah. Mm-hmm,
sure the listeners out there
so much indeed.
Are sensing a lot of tension between our two characters. They'll have to wait till
sensing a little hostility.
Have to wait another 15 podcast sessions to hear that.
I mean, overall, like self-inflicted too.
Yeah, pretty much.
I feel victimized right now. I do not feel like this was self-inflicted by me at all.
Oh, haha, of course. You don't call your god every day. Yeah, sure.
What does that have to do with anything?
Oh, you know what it has to do with.
That has nothing to do. No. The decisions were already made.
Yeah, how about alignment in general?
By not me.
What do you guys think about this next topic?
Yeah,
that's
what
not
is
this
yours?
One?
Is it how quick is yours shifting these days?
Oh, I am always chaotic neutral.
That's like the Jack Sparrow default alignment, right? For you?
Oh, easy. Easy.
Yeah, I think that I was chaotic neutral last time.
Yeah, I think that's kind of ends up being the one that I sort of default to. I have been definitely the chaotic alignment, but I've been chaotic good as well. And my character, which was my druid dwarf who thinks he's an elf, while he was chaotic good, he was kind of a greater good. So like he did kind of have that like, well, I mean, if you sacrifice one to save everyone, isn't that worth it? Like sort of that kind of thing. Which he didn't have like a full plan of like necessarily sacrifice, but like it's okay, we can bring her back, so it'll be fine. Like kind of that kind of thing. And yes, it is flawed and kind of that sort of like mildly fucked up kind of way. But like he really thought, again, it was like the greater good. It's just like if you think of a druid in like the forest and stuff like that, you do need the forest to burn a little bit for the forest's health. And something in real life that's a big thing about it. Like forest fires are a good thing for the forest. Not obviously crazy forest fires that are out of control, but like little forest fires are natural and they help the ecosystem as a whole. And so that's what the idea with the kind of greater good of it for a druid was for me.
Yeah, I think for me, I definitely used to default to like neutral good. I think that was like a safer spot for me. Then I switched.
Yeah, you could never choose. That's why.
Well, then I switched. You're going to say that even more so. Then I switched a lot to true neutral because then I could at least, I felt like I had more wiggle room in that one, like depending on where the character wanted to go. And that's sort of where I've stuck, I think, for a little while now, is more typically true neutral. I've actually not really done chaotic very much. I haven't really done lawful either.
This one, I think I started off chaotic good, right, and moved into neutral good, I think, is where I'm at right now.
Feels right.
But it turns out neutral good sucks when everyone else is pure chaos.
I think I've been all over the place. I've been lawful evil. I've been chaotic neutral. I've been chaotic good. I've been lawful good. I like having the diversity, and actually, I've been chaotic evil too with my Calistar Coachella as well. So I've definitely been all over the place. But I kind of have fun with the emphasis of the stuff. While yes, again, I generally gravitate towards the chaos of it because I love the chaos. It's fun having the values and virtues, which unironically like does lend itself to chaos. Like my lawful good, I don't know if he was lawful good, but he was definitely lawful fighter Rin. Couldn't tell a lie. Like he would not lie. It ended up being this whole kind of chaos where like the whole group like was like, we need to get these plans. We could try forging them, but we can't tell him or else he's going to tell the truth and just cause havoc, because they're like, oh yeah, they're forged and stuff. And so the group had to like work around that, which is actually really funny.
Yeah, I remember that. It was we had to come up with something quick, but then also had to all stick to it. Yeah, it's funny to find the workarounds.
Yeah, and that's where like while we talk about the alignments and stuff, where it kind of bleeds into our first of just the affecting your characters. And I think alignments can do that really well if you play them right. They should be a guideline, not something that you're beholden by. If anything, like you should be this character that starts off particularly as your alignment, but if the campaign kind of pulls you in a direction, let it pull you. If you want to be a lawful good person who slowly turns into chaotic evil somehow through the course of the campaign, and just finding that, the greater good is just eradication or something like that, let it happen. It'd be fun.
Yeah, I think that is what happened to not last character, one before. When as he found out like what happened to his people and his wife and everything throughout the campaign, he just sort of, I can't remember if he was lawful good to start. It might have been neutral good, I'm not sure. And then he went true neutral after that or something. But yeah, events of the campaign, just battles after battles or something too could have an impact.
What would you say he ended on in this campaign, Randy? The last time we saw Lex?
Spoilers. But he being as a paladin, he started as a lawful good. I wouldn't say he was necessarily lawful. No, because he still had a code and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't really want to say, to be honest. Not until this campaign's over. We'll figure it out.
Not until we see him again, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
And see how far he's coming.
He's going to be waiting for you.
Yeah.
Waiting for you when you get there.
Final boss.
Yeah. He's expecting you to come through the portal. You didn't, so he hid until you showed up. He's very hungry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still not answering any of my messages.
No, because you took him off your speed dial.
Ooh.
I still called him. You didn't have to be on speed dial for me to call.
The number you have reached is not currently available. Please try your call again later.
No, I'm sure he's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I mean, to be fair, did he really answer your calls before that often?
No, that's why.
Yeah,
there's no point.
It's just normal.
Yeah. This is a great example of running into one of your past characters in a campaign and just having to live with it.
Finding out how annoying
having to live with the decisions you made.
I really enjoyed playing that character, but having to be a new character alongside that character was a different story.
It reminded me of like, how they say like when you're telling stories from your childhood to all your friends and you don't realize that like they're traumatic. You're just like, this happened to me when I was a kid, and all your friends are like,
oh my God, I'm
what?
so sorry.
Yeah, that's what it was like for you to be with Lex. You're just like, oh, that's my old character. And everyone's like, are you okay?
No. He's great. Trust me.
You're like, he's great. And then as it went on, you were like, wait a minute.
All right, hold on. Did he just open a portal to the hells? Wait a minute.
Was he made of nothing but trauma? And I just didn't.
It is funny having like sometimes you guys come across your old characters and you just go, and then you guys have a conversation and just go like, man, what an asshole. Like after, it's like, God, man, fuck that guy.
I remember, I mean, I'm still obviously hoping that we see Casa and Nano again. Mostly just because I want Randy to have to do a French accent, even though I know he won't do it. She was like very abrasive, but like not necessarily unfriendly, but she would say stuff to NPCs that the NPCs would be like, what? Like all the time. So I can imagine her being a character that like if I ran into her now, I'd be like, no. Like I don't think my current character would like her very much.
I'm pretty sure my current one wouldn't like that previous one either for me, but mostly because the opposite reason. I think it would be opposites. Like, yeah. Like Silica would like Casa and Domino would like Nano. Plus they're both clerics, so they'd get along.
Would they? Because then they'd be fighting over, oh, my god's better than your god, and all of a sudden, chaos ensues from there.
I mean, I don't think Domino would have that fight. I don't think she cares.
You never know. Maybe your god will have that fight for you.
We'll find out soon.
He's getting a little feisty lately.
Meow.
Oh boy.
Thanks, I hate it.
But yeah, I think with alignments, as long as you're kind of not having them limiting your character, but having them enhance your character, something to keep them in line without it being something that forces them to do things that they may not even do because that's the lawful good thing. For example, there's the lawful good paladin's always a good example, but we have one while he does stick to good virtues and is a tough character to convince to do things. Like in the same respect, like because of his virtues and stuff, you know how to manipulate him. And I'm not saying that in sort of the bad way, but you know what he stands for. So you know how to convince him to do something. So is your character that kind of character that could do that? Like, hey, we'll save like thousands of people if you come along with this. It's like, wow, thousands? Yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that, versus like, hey, we're going to kill like 6 people. You want to come with? No, you don't want to go that route. He's awful good. It's not the killing. It's the, why are you killing them,
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of that too plays into like every character, especially if you, depending on the campaign goals, obviously, but if you're in a sort of heroic based campaign where like you are on a save the world path, right? Or like stop the apocalypse or whatever. Yeah. Each character has to have for themselves like a reason why they want to be doing that.
For sure.
And because obviously like most people would be like, I'm not doing that. like just as, creatures that want to live, like why would you want to be the one that's doing that? And so everybody's like ultimate motivation can be like, for example, we want to stop the apocalypse, but like maybe the paladin's motivation is I want to save every single person on this plane, so I'm going to stop the apocalypse. And maybe a character like mine, my motivation would be like I want to save like the 4 specific people I give a shit about, and if everyone else on this plane lives too, great. And it's like the same end goal, but it's not exactly the same thing,
Yeah, and I think this transitions well into lawful or evil characters in general, because I had an evil person who, as I've said before, like didn't even have a good reason to be with the party, like just didn't have that involvement. And I think that's one of the hardest things with evil people is like they're all supposed to be in some sort of way probably selfish or self-serving or something along those lines. So you have to figure out the motivation as to why you're sticking with the group. And I think evil characters are fairly difficult to figure that out. But in the same respect, lawful people can be difficult if they're all a different kind of lawful. If there's the ones that no killing in general, and then you have ones that protect the weak, and then they conflict because one of them just doesn't want to kill people in general, but someone's killing people, and you're like, well, I gotta, but you're still kind of not being a good person by being lawful and choosing not to kill people because you're just letting bad things happen around you. So that ends up being a whole fun bag to deal with if they choose to go that kind of route.
Back to your like Batman versus, it's like your vigilante Batman versus the Punisher.
Oh, for sure. It's a good
kind
example.
of debate, right? Like who's right, who's not. Like the Punisher is obviously super violent and a murderer, but like arguably does he get better results? Maybe, or like you have a Batman who tells himself he doesn't kill anybody, but come on, we've seen those guys fall off of buildings. Like they're not coming back from that. Like who's he really like? Like, is he just in denial, or is he actually not killing anyone? Or even like Spider-Man, like some of the Spider-Man iterations, like I think specifically in the MCU, like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man is like the strongest one, right? They all have like different high points. And his was like, I stopped pulling my punches, right? Like, so you go through a phase where like you just want the bad guys to stop getting back up, right? But does that mean you're not a hero anymore? Like, yeah, those are big conversations.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the, just like Spider-Man versus Venom. But I think the idea with like Batman's great because the Joker always manages to break out of Arkham and then just goes on to kill more people. But if he would just kill that one person, the potential lives that the Joker doesn't ruin. But that's a moral obligation that, someone does want to consider. And it's one of those things that like Batman, he's not necessarily good by just not killing people because he's still a vigilante and does these things and gets people in trouble. But because he's so powerful for Gotham, other people had to get more powerful to try to compete with Batman, which caused an even more level of chaos amongst the city. As one of the reasons people weren't a big fan of the show Gotham, which was amazing, by the way, was because
yes,
Batman came first and then came all like the Joker and Penguin stuff because they were a reaction to the basically power creep that Batman introduced. Same thing with the Punisher, right? Though, on the other side is, yeah, they're always going to be bad people, but he's one guy killing a lot of bad people. So it's like the scales tip in a different way versus the one guy who just has a lot of bad people and he keeps throwing them in jail, but they keep coming out.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, with D&D, it really comes down to the group composition and group like alignment, right? Like what are their goals? You kind of mentioned this before, Randy, but I mean, because sometimes, an evil character could be just as disruptive as a good character. Like if a good character is trying to mix in with a group of all neutral and some evil characters or something to that effect too. Same with lawful. Like a lawful character can be just as disruptive to a group of neutral people. So it definitely comes into play a few things. It's like, yeah, do they have an overall reason to be together? What is that reason? What are they striving for? Did they change alignments during the campaign, or did it come from like the beginning? Were they that I don't know, a lot of considerations of how we fit in. I think that's probably one of the reasons I tend to stick to neutral is, personally, I just find it easier to then find the reason. Like a lot of times we'll have an initial reason, but find another reason to stay with a group too as time goes on. Neutral just sort of allows for that flexibility, I find personally.
See, but I also think a lawful good person can party with a chaotic evil person on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. It has to be, why are both parties with the party? Like, can they not do this on their own? Is it because like my chaotic evil character considered the party as the fodder? Like, better them get hit than me. So as long as they're the ones taking the hits and I kind of get what I kind of want out of it, then that's fine. So I'm willing to probably toe the line a little bit of like my wants because the group wants it, but I'm going to try to help it align with me a little bit to go along the way. That might help the lawful good person to kind of keep going, but he always has an eye on me because I'm the one who's out for myself in the end of the day. And that's fine because it gets a good banter going between us, but it's not enough where we're like purposely trying to get one of us out of the group, because that I think is a problem as well. is that you still have to figure out how to work together. And that's where you have to always think of the party first.
Which part of the alignment do you guys find to be the most tricky? So the first part, the lawful, neutral, chaotic, or the back half, the good, neutral, evil?
I find lawful to be difficult in general.
I would agree with that. But I think we're evil people, is why.
Yeah, we could be evil, but I was
Wow.
gonna say I think a lot of it for me personally comes from being raised extremely strictly religious and then sort of like like leaving that behind as a personal life choice. But when you are raised constantly in like, this is good, this is bad, like do this, do that, don't do this, do that. And the lawful like vibe to me feels very like strict rules and regulations. And I just still am allergic to those. Like maybe one day I'll want to play that. But I feel like for me personally, it's like Tuki, you always say you want to have fantasy in your fantasy games. It's like in my fantasies, I'm not like a strict by the rules like church person or a cop or whatever. Like I just, that's not fun for me. So I tend to avoid like the stereotypical type of lawful characters.
I also think with an evil person, them typically an evil person will be self-serving or selfish in some sort of fashion. And I think that's an easy enough way if you can figure that out and know that and integrate it into a party of how you can make the party more work for you. Again, like fodder, like using the party to create your greater goals, for example, like that. But the thing about a lawful character is they have these laws to them that are just so strict,
incredibly binding.
Yeah, incredibly binding that like creates this wall that you have to figure out a way to get over or across, and unlikely to break it down. And so that creates a dynamic where you more have to try to work with them rather than the evil person to bring them along, because the evil person will probably go along with it if you can just figure out what they like and then you kind of go from there. But the lawful person, you always have to toe the line with what do they value. And yeah, it kind of sounds similar with the evil person, but with a lawful person, it's just so much stricter.
It's a lot more rigid.
Yeah.
For me, I'm actually going to go the other way around. I think overall we're all three of us sort of agreeing that like lawful can be tricky, and then on the other side, like evil can be tricky. For me, I would actually say evil would probably be the most tricky for me, just because I think we've talked about this before. But
you're a good person.
No, it's well, okay. I mean, maybe, but it's the interaction. We just started talking out about like how your character impacts other characters. Like me as a player, I've always tried to have positive impacts on other characters, and I prefer to do that. So playing an evil character can sometimes be a little tricky, like keeping the group together or doing, it's a little harder to do that on a character that's evil. While lawful, I always come back to paladins. I think we keep using that as an example, but lawful, you almost have an excuse for what your character is doing because, like, oh, well, they're a paladin, they have to do this to keep their oath or whatever else. So yeah, I don't. Again, could be different for every person out there, but yeah, I personally have the hardest time, I think, with evil.
At the same point, like I feel like that helps your character, but it's a harder thing for. Not a harder thing. I think that's a thing that the party is still like overcoming one versus the other. Yes, they're both tricky. Or you just go lawful evil, like one of my characters I actually had, where you are a person who's this murder hobo, but he's got conditions to be a murder hobo, so kind of helps with the evil part.
It also depends on if your general group is into the murder hobo thing, because sometimes if the entire group wants to be like, and that's one of your, we've talked a little bit about this, but like up front before your campaign starts, you should always like nail down what kind of a vibe you want to have. And if a lot of people are like, oh, I want to do like a heroic campaign and we can all be heroes. And one guy's like, I'm in a murder hobo, everyone that you think about talking to. And then it becomes a real like contentious issue, not just among the party, but it can also irritate the other players. I know some groups that have fallen apart because someone was just like way too into being a murder hobo and like they couldn't get anything done. You know, it's like every time you try to ask someone a question or something, like they were dead before you got there. It's just like, oh my God, like Jeff, knock it off, you know.
That's why even as an evil character, I always had conditions because I think the idea with lawful, while yes, is a much more strict stuff like that, but having some sort of rule set for almost any alignment realistically and allowing your character, and I think this is a personal reason why like the personality traits are really useful, but like those should be the things that you stick to out of anything else, is those personality traits, the flaws, the bonds and stuff like that, and using those to help keep your character from not just being the murder hobo, but having these conditions to be a little more party friendly. For because even like a true neutral character can be like, oh my God, like, can you make a decision? Like you're the fifth person, like we're 2 and 2, and you're like, I don't care, man. Like that can be just as annoying for a party who's like trying to get your opinion.
Yeah.
Like someone with their Baldur's Gate playthrough.
Wait a minute. I did nothing wrong. Sticking by that.
Tukey, you know, you did nothing wrong in like 3 different planes of existence.
Yeah, it's impressive.
At this point, it's interesting how it's always that you've done nothing wrong.
I mean,
it's typical evil characters.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow. Just try to defend yourself out there, folks, and this is what happens.
So does anybody, obviously, Tukey likes to be true neutral just to drive everyone as insane as possible, but does anyone else have an absolute favorite alignment to play?
Oh, easy chaotic neutral.
I do love chaotic neutral.
Yeah, I love the idea of having towing the line on both sides and having a sway. Again, chaotic's kind of my thing, but like either chaotic good, neutral, or evil is typically what I would favor. But I had a lot of fun being my lawful evil character. I had a lot of fun being lawful in general because I try to stick to codes that are mildly detrimental. Like again, the I will not tell a lie sort of thing. But I'm also not a person who's like I think violence sometimes is the answer, but I'm not gonna lie and say I didn't beat the shit out of him, you know? So like I like having that sort of dynamic with it.
One of my favorite examples of and it was like a meme I saw last week, but I'm sure most of us, if not everyone who would ever listen to a podcast that has anything to do with D&D are familiar with Dimension 20 and Brennan Mulligan. But his character from their season where they did A Court of Fey and Flowers was what is being described as lawful chaotic, which is like truly, I believe, maybe something only Brennan could pull off without just like an intense amount of planning. But it was amazing to watch a truly like lawful chaotic character was a trip. And so that kind of got me thinking about like combining really unusual classes that like usually don't fall on the grid and seeing just like what insanity pops out, because that character was one of my favorites that he's ever done.
Yeah,
it was really cool.
Which, like, if you follow the alignment chart, that's not even something that should exist, but it totally should. Like, chaos should be its own category.
Yeah, he nailed it for sure.
I'm a lawful good chaos character.
Now that I think about it, I'm not even sure I've done chaotic that much. I'm like trying to think back to previous characters. Maybe that'll be something good for me to try out in the future. But yeah, I don't actually think I've done chaotic too much either. I mean, you kind of said it, but for me, true neutral, I just feel like it gives you a lot of range to kind of swing during as the campaign goes on. But
It does, but like it has this thing where, because you kind of don't have that decision where you kind of swing both ways, has that effect that you're that floppy person or character and stuff too, that can happen, versus the good character who believes in the goodness of stuff and the evil person who believes that in the goodness in me. And it makes it easier for a party, but it may not necessarily be easier for the character. Well, you try to have it evolve later on in the campaign to be like sort of swaying good or evil. Yeah, I think it's just as interesting to have a person who was good slowly turn evil throughout the course of a campaign, because you had these virtues and these values and stuff, and just how they get twisted and corrupted by the just horrors of humanity, for example.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying as well with the true neutral could be, yeah, like if it stays that way too long or there's too many inconsistencies, it could be like, well, what does that person even stand for at a certain point? Or what is your character even doing? What is their actual goal? Why are they even with the
You're
group?
just there to exist.
Yeah. That's fair.
Or just their growth.
Yeah, if they don't grow.
Or just like their growth can feel static. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why like neutral, like while it can be fun, can be sort of a detriment. And I'm feeling even more like my druid was a chaotic neutral, but I still think it was on the good side, or it leaned good, because again, the greater good thing. But the fact that you're willing to kill a few people to save many is a very, I would say at least a neutral stance, because that's while yes, the good person should say, I wouldn't kill anybody, but sometimes that person, like we said with Batman, sometimes you need to kill the Joker to save everyone that he would potentially kill.
We're talking fantasy worlds.
Yeah, I haven't decided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Minority Report too.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. I could talk about Minority Report and like Psychopaths all day.
Oh, all day.
With all of these alignments and things, getting lots of ideas for new characters. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, speaking of alignments, I wonder what our next one's going to end up with.
Let's go make one.
Okay. Probably rolling now one.
This is the Flash Round, where we take turns creating the bones of a character that anyone can use. If you play one, let us know who they become. Roll initiative.
16.
I got an 8.
I also got a 16, but I have a +2 to Dex now, so I have an 18.
Wait, what?
Rude.
I'm sorry, I leveled up.
Come on.
Without us?
Oh, like, you gotta grind out those rats somehow.
Well, you're up then.
Tukey, this is what we get for going to the beach.
Exactly.
Worth it.
That'll teach you guys. Just like I think a gem dragonborn will teach those out there, and specifically let's go with a sapphire dragonborn.
Nice. All right, well, for that sapphire dragonborn, I'll go with a rogue class.
All right, I'm going to go with a soul knife rogue.
Ooh. With the soul knife, it'll be more like a dark blue sapphire kind of glow, and some of its horns on the back of it are more crystalline looking, but it has only one horn. One is clearly cut off on the top of its head.
All right, so maybe it's been through some things. So I'm going to go for the background soldier.
Interesting. Personality trait or quirk is they kind of have a tick where anytime they see someone else wearing a red robe in the world, they try to see if they could get them to notice their thieves' cant.
But for their ideals, it'll be honor. They do believe in a fair trade.
They're so honorable. For their bonds, they're gonna be... They'll do anything for those around them, even if it means to kill.
Edgy.
They've seen things.
Okay, and for their flaw, I will just add, even if it means sacrificing themselves.
Oh, we're all working on this. All right. For their item, a lucky coin. Nothing special about it, but it's lucky to them.
Where did that come from?
Canada.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a Canadian coin.
Everyone's lucky coin comes from Canada.
How did you know?
They just have those cool ones with like the 2 circles.
It's true, and it's designed all neat. Anyway, the name.
The name is going to be Trentai. Trentai.
I already don't know how to spell it. I love him so much.
I already forgot how to spell it.
Are you going to use him for one of your NPCs, Randy?
He's already written in there. And hopefully everyone else will have what they do with him as well.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this session and want to hear more, you can find us on Twitter at DysFictionalPod for our latest updates and downloads.
Original music for this podcast is provided by Joshua Silver, the artist known as Dimanon on Spotify.
And remember, lawful evil and lawful good can both just be big cop energy.